Another reshuffling of the deck. Here is Brandon Marcello's take on Week 8. He's got Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State as his top 3 teams. Texas down to 6 after suffering its first loss of the season. In this very game, deciding games in the SEC really headlined Saturday's action. Georgia put the hurt on the horns. The Dogs defense pitching a shutout in the first half and forcing Texas to make a change at quarterback, which means we in the media get to talk about a controversy all week long. Shout out Dogs for that. Let's go over to Knoxville. After missing home run after home run, Nico, he hit when it counted. A perfectly placed ball right there to Chris Brazel in the end zone to take the first lead of the game. The Vols defense held up so fans could light it up. And of course, the goalpost, they didn't stand a chance. So
did they smoke the goalpost too?
They didn't smoke the goalpost.
Figure that out. Boy, that'd be something.
But they took them to an unknown location. They didn't follow it this time. It's been a rough go for Alabama in the Volunteer State. 0-2 against Tennessee teams. There was, of course, the shocking loss to Vanderbilt, and then taking another loss 180 miles east. Memphis, though, not on the schedule. So thankfully, Alabama is done there. And after all of that, this is what the SEC standings look like. You've got A&M and LSU at the top, and wouldn't you know it, they actually play each other this week, so that's convenient. Then in a few weeks, we're going to see the Vols and Dogs in Athens. So still a lot to be decided in the SEC. And when it's time to decide things, we bring in Josh Pate, who deja vu in Knoxville once again. It seems like all the photos and videos that you have been posting were just kind of reruns of what happened in 2022. But some people are saying coming out of this game that the Alabama dynasty is done. What say you,
People
Josh
are saying,
Pate?
People are
I
saying.
can't imagine who in the world would be saying that. Certainly no one on that desk. The Saban dynasty is done, so there's that much. I guess the question was, when the baton gets handed off, does the nose of the plane dip any? Well, spoiler alert, if you've been DVRing these games and you haven't watched, the nose has indeed dipped. And I don't want to say free fall right now because technically they're still in the playoff picture, but I don't know. If I were to ask Emily, Hassel, Kanell, like, could you tell me what Alabama's offensive identity is right now? And it's gotten worse kind of over the last few weeks because they didn't have explosive passes. They didn't have explosive runs last week. Defensively, they've kind of been what they are all year. So that's the microcosm. In the macro, I don't know. I think I viewed it as there's one door closes and then another door opens. So in terms of dynasty talk, I think we're just on chapter 1 of whatever a new era is. And chapter 1, page 1 has started off a little shakily. But I also don't think this is fully like Kalen DeBoer's Alabama. I don't know what that'll be. I tend to think it'll be good. But like year 2 and year 3, I just think it'll feel a lot different than it feels now. It's just a weird time.
The Bama dynasty ended after the 2020 national championship. Like, this thing has been over for quite some time because you can't have multiple dynasties at the same time. Georgia then had their dynasty, when they won back-to-back titles in 21 and 22. So this Bama, lore that lives there, it was a phenomenal run, but enjoy it and then move on. They were not a very good team last year. That might have been Nick Saban's best coaching job with that roster, getting them to the playoffs, getting them past Georgia and taking it to overtime against Michigan. But now that he's done, I think Alabama fans have to embrace what Josh is talking about. This is a Kalen DeBoer era. There are going to be some growing pains. They're not a very good team right now. They are not a playoff team, too. We can stop talking about playoff elimination as, can they still make it if they're 10-2? They are done.
What?
Alabama is
You're telling me if they win out, they're not going to be in the playoffs?
They're not going to win out.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Right.
Like, we keep talking about this, like, well, what if they go 10-2? They're not going to go 10-2 playing the way they are. They're too reliant on Jalen Milroe, who is banged up, and he's out there. He hasn't eclipsed 30 yards rushing in 3 games, and that used to be his superpower, was the ability to take over games with his physical presence and his running ability. He can't do that. They were too reliant on Ryan Williams on the outside, a 17-year-old freshman. They don't have any depth. And the defense is bottom barrel of the SEC. This isn't a very good football team. So while we can talk about playoffs all we want, this year is a rebuild year while they try to figure out exactly what Pate's talking about. Kalen DeBoer needs to evaluate the roster the way he wants to, the way his staff wants to, and build what he wants to build. This is a transition year, and it's normal. What's not normal is the success they had with Nick Saban. That run was one we may never see again. What is normal is a transition period that we're seeing unfold right now.
Well, it is not a normal year in the SEC because for the first time in almost 20 years, every single team in the conference has a loss before the start of November. And Pate, it seems like that this year, maybe more than others, it's more wide open. How many teams in your mind could win, not just the SEC, but could win the national championship this season?
Oh, man, actually, the answer to the first question you almost asked, who could win the SEC, It feels like the two of them right now. It feels like we just watched them play in Austin, although LSU fans would push back on that. I agree with Kanell. Bama, I'm speaking mathematically, they're not eliminated, but they certainly don't feel like they're done losing right now either. LSU, on the other hand, feels like they're trending up. Still got questions about Tennessee, but at the same time, if we're talking about like the cream of the crop, it's Georgia and then we can fill in the rest. But if we're talking about winning the whole thing, I'd still start with Georgia. Texas is right behind them, though, still as one of the favorites to win the conference, therefore one of the favorites to win it all. I happen to believe there was sort of a little cattle prod to the neck theory in play with Texas the other day, and that they experienced that for the first time. That's getting thrown in 53-degree water for the first time, and it's a shock to the senses. But Texas can swim. I think Texas can swim, and I think if they get another shot, and Georgia does not set up shop 4 times, I think, on scoring drives in Texas territory, maybe it's a different outcome. But you let Texas loose in the postseason, I think they can win it. I think Georgia can win it. LSU's a total wild card. That right this second is where I would stop the list of SEC teams that I think could win it all.
Danny, how about teams from other conferences? Who do you think outside the SEC could win a national championship?
This is why I love this conversation, because I think parity has been the story of this season, but I think it is just below this tier of teams we're talking about. I think you can throw a very small blanket around the teams that can actually win a national championship. I think you start with those two from the SEC that Pate just gave. I agree with him on Georgia and Texas. I think it's Oregon. I think it's Ohio State and Clemson. Because they've got the pedigree. They've done it before, which would be an incredible story. Maybe Miami because of what Cam Ward brings to the table, but their defense has some serious issues to fix. Maybe there's a path where that offense carries them to the finish line. I don't think the Big 12 has a true national championship contender. So I'd say it's a group of about 5 or 6 teams that can actually go through the gauntlet of a 12-team playoff once you get there. Remember, it's not just about getting there. It's about beating all those teams to get there, and you have to have depth to do that.
We have 17 teams with a 40% chance to make it into the college football playoff. It has expanded, and it has welcomed in a lot of new competitors. Awesome. Speaking of all of that parity, we don't have a lot of undefeated teams left, and our Josh Pate is going to rank the 10 undefeateds. Go ahead.
Okay, this was a chore. This was a task. At the top, it's not. Like at the top, Oregon, I'm having to look at my phone over here. So Oregon, Penn State, Miami, I think America may switch 2 and 3, but that's pretty clear to me. Iowa State's at number 4, but this is, to me, Iowa State, Indiana, Brigham Young, where you could get interchangeable. I think Iowa State is a better team than those two, but I just watched Indiana splatter Nebraska all over Bloomington. So if you wanted to push back on that one, I would listen to you. Indiana's got a more treacherous path schedule-wise, maybe the rest of the way. Pitt is a total outlier, like total wild card. Don't know what to make of them, but good for them in what they've been able to do. And then, we could just have a total figurative knife fight here on Army, Liberty, Navy. Because I know good and well, I turn these in 8, 9, 10, and no matter what order I put those teams in, I was going to get pushback. So I just want to know, where is the pushback coming? Because you'd have a hard time separating those in my mind.
I would push back on Liberty ahead of Navy. That's my
what a fight. And we all knew that this was the fight that was coming before Halloween. Liberty versus Navy.
I love it. And Liberty, the problem I have with Liberty, I forgot they were undefeated because they don't play a Power 4 opponent on the
and
year.
Nobody wants to
play.
They
also lost maybe their toughest game, too, with the App State game being canceled.
Right.
They've taken a team to overtime. It hasn't been pretty, but they are undefeated.
I would put Indiana slightly higher, but I would hedge it because of the Curtis Work injury. That has me a little bit worried about what they could be, but they have been an absolute juggernaut. A wagon, as Tom Fornelli would call them.
Official wagon status?
Yeah, they
Wagon
are.
status.
They've been christened.
Yeah, Indiana's got Washington this week, and only I think a 6-point favorite or so because Rourke is out.
Same as they were against Nebraska.
Yeah, I picked Nebraska on that one. Idiot alert! Josh Pate's college football show coming up tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on the YouTube page.